Oh my god. My mic hasn't been being picked up this entire time. Okay, I have to go back again. Oh shit. Okay. Uh I'll probably edit this into I'll probably edit this. Oh my god, that's so funny. Okay. Yeah, my fucking mic was just completely muted. I was well, no, it wasn't that it was even muted, is the worst part. Sometimes mm, it doesn't OBS doesn't pick up the fact that I have my mic connected, and so I have to go into properties and I have to manually select my mic. And I don't know why that happens, but it sometimes does. And it's like a very rare thing. I should have checked, but I like literally got up. I like fucking shuffled my way up to my desk. And so yeah, okay, well, I guess we have to restart now. But thankfully, we didn't make it that far. I'm so glad. I'm so glad I noticed that before we got far into this. The collective's two powers of representation. We have just traversed one of the 4 or 5 most difficult passages of our itinerary. But there was no way to avoid this effort, since the distinction between facts and values had for a very long time paralyzed all discussion on the relations between science and politics, between nature and society. Um, he does he reference? Okay, I don't see him referencing it, so we're actually gonna go over this real quick. Box 3.1, recapitulation of the 2 forms of power and the 4 requirements that must allow the collective to proceed according to due process to the exploration of the common world. Power to take into account. How many are we? First requirement, firmly contained in the notion of fact. We will not simplify the number of propositions to be taken into account in the discussion. Complexity. Second requirement, formally contained in the notion of value. You shall make sure that the number of voices that participate in the articulation of proposition is not arbitrarily short-circuited. Consultation. And the power to arrange in rank order. Can we live together? Third requirement, formally contained in the notion of value. We shall discuss the compatibility of new propositions with those which are already instituted in such a way as to maintain them all in the same common world that will give them their legitimate place. Hierarchization. Fourth requirement, formally contained in the notion of fact. Once the propositions have been instituted, we shall no longer question their legitimate presence at the heart of collective life. Institution. Now we need to understand the logic of these aggregates, which have become, in my view, much more comprehensible, homogeneous, and logical, and which are going to be able to use throughout the rest of this book. To be sure, the terms we are going to adopt in this section will seem a bit strange. This is because they do not have the benefit of long use. They have not become conceptual institutions, forms of life, forms of the new common sense. Just as for years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, East Germany and West Germany are still recognized, even though they are now part of the same nation. In the same way, we shall often have the impression that the words we are going to pair up would be more at ease if we separated them once again. Or conversely, the words we have separated would do better together. Readers will have to accept this strangeness, nevertheless, and judge one chapter at a time with the new separation of powers. It is not highly preferable to the old. The 4 essential requirements form 2 coherent sets. the four essential requirements are the thing that we went over just now in this box, but that were also explained in the previous section. And the two coherent sets are obviously the question of the power to arrange and rank in order can we live together, the power to take into account how many are we. And those are the two sets. The four essential requirements form two coherent sets. Something that would have been obvious a long time ago if the fact-value distinction had not been in place to disturb their coupling. Yeah, I think so. It's there's a I'll just say yeah. To keep it simple, I'll say yeah. I'll just say yeah. The first set answers just one question. How many new propositions must we take into account in order to articulate a single common world in a coherent way? Such is the first power that we seek to recognize in the collective. So despite what the fourth one is, despite it being once something is instituted, it will no longer be questioned, you can still make revisions. For Latour, what he just did there is kind of like what he did in his other thing, going over the and it was 5 requirements, and there was a very particular thing to him. For him in it, the first one was once something is like whatever you want to say, like determined to be true or whatever, it shall no longer be questioned. But there was something very particular. But there can be new actors added, and so it can be revised. It can be determined that there was like an unfair ruling, basically, is how it goes, is how he kind of ends up putting it. And so there needs to be revision. It's there could be like a revision process to all this. For the tour, you have to follow all 5 of the requirements. Yes. So if it is found out that there was a short circuiting, if it is found out that not everything was actually collected, there can be revision. Yeah. It's gonna probably be confusing for a while. He's probably not gonna get much into it. But I can one, I can send you the essay, but I can also go over it with you a little bit after we stream if you want, because it's like literally a short essay. It's like 12 pages. It might be more than that. It might be like 20 pages, but it's no longer than 20 pages, and we can go over the short section talking about it without the need for the rest of it. So the power to take into account brings 2 essential guarantees, one coming from the old facts and the other from the old values. First, the number of candidate entities must not be arbitrarily reduced in the interests of facility or convenience. In other words, nothing must stifle too quickly the perplexity into which the agents find themselves plunged, owing to the emergence of new beings. This is what could be called the requirement of external reality. There is no reason not to use those words, now that the word reality and externality have been freed of the poison of, in parentheses, political epistemology. Second, the number of those which participate in this process are perplexing must not itself be limited too quickly or too arbitrarily. Discussion would, of course, be accelerated, but its outcome would become too easy. It would lack broader consultation, the only form capable of verifying the importance and the qualification of the new entities. On the contrary, it is necessary to make sure that reliable witnesses, assured opinions, credible spokespersons have been summoned, thanks to a long effort of investigation and provocation, in the etymological sense of production of voices. And we go to 268? Are we at 268 now? 268. 110. Okay, I completely forgot. Oh, it's 15. Okay, so we're on this page. Another of Stenger's expressions. Reliable witness should remind readers that humans are not necessarily involved, and that it is not a matter of clearly expressing an opinion either. Stenger's 2000. As we shall see in the next chapter, the search for reliable witnesses is a risky enterprise, for which the overworked word consultation does not seem to offer adequate preparation. By adding the notion of pertinence to the notion of consultation, we hope to alleviate its weakness, provided that the results of Chapter 2 on speech impedimenta are not forgotten. Democracy may be logocentric, but in the logos non-humans speak too, or rather mumble. The logos encompasses not only the stammerings of the orator Demosthenes, but the complete gamut from silence to logoria. Logoria? I think I looked that up before, but I forget what it means. Logoria. Oh, okay. Yes, I did. I did look it up before. It basically means when you talk fancy, is how I'm gonna put it. In they fucking use the term loquacity. Loquacity? It's probably loquacity. Let us call this constraint the requirement of relevance, to remind us that all the relevant voices have been convoked. The second set answers another question. What order must be found for the common world formed by the set of new and old propositions? Such is the second power, which we call the power to put in order. Two essential guarantees ensure a satisfactory answer to this question. First, no new entity can be accepted in the common world without concern for its compatibility with those which already have their place there. It is forbidden, for example, to banish all the secondary qualities by an ultimatum on the pretext that one already possesses the primary qualities that have become, without due process, the only ingredients of the common world. And then 268. We recognize the dislocation between the continuing movement of research and the work of closure, the emergence of the principle of precaution, so important for all these questions. See Goddard 1997, Ewald 2001, Trotwood 2003, and Sadelier 2002. We're on 110 still? Yeah, we are. An explicit work of hierarchization through compromise and accommodation makes it possible to take in, as it were, the novelty of the beings the work of taking into account would risk multiplying. Such is the requirement of plebiscity in the ranking of entities, which replaces the clandestiny permitted by the old notion of nature. Second, once the discussion is closed and a hierarchy established, the discussion must not be reopened, and one must be able to use the obvious presence of these states of the world as indisputable premises for all the reasoning to come. Without this requirement of institution, the discussion would never come to an end, and would never succeed in knowing in what common, self-evident, certain world collective life ought to take place. Such is the requirement of closure of the discussion. The power to take into account how many are we, complexity, requirement of external reality, consultation, requirement of relevance, power to arrange in rank order, can we live together, hierarchy, requirement of publicity, institution, requirement of closure. To make this clearer, box 3.2 summarizes the terms we propose to introduce. Before going further, let us note that with the new separation of powers in these four questions, we are not introducing any dangerous innovation. We're only describing more concisely what the impossible fact-value distinction sought to make indescribable. Let us take the example of prions, those unconventional proteins that appear responsible for the so-called mad cow disease. It is useless, as we now understand, to require scientists to prove definitively that these agents exist, so that politicians can then seriously raise the question of what they ought to do. At the beginning of the mad cow affair, Monsieur Chirac, the French president, initially summoned Monsieur Dumont, specialist in those tiny beings. Accept your responsibilities, Dr. Dumont, and tell us whether or not prions are responsible for the disease. To which the professor, as a good researcher, responded coolly, I accept my responsibilities, Mr. President. My answer is that I don't know. Objects of ambiguous controversy, prions suffice to induce perplexity. Requirement number one, not only among researchers, but also among cattle farmers, bureaucrats, consumers, and producers of animal-based feed. To mention cows and prime ministers. Candidates for existence, prions bring with them all the external reality necessary to stir up the collective. The only thing they no longer bring, but no one asks it of them any longer, except invertebrate modernists like Monsieur Chirac, is the capacity to silence the collective with their indisputable essence. From this point on, they are waiting to gain this essence from a procedure that is underway. Who is to judge these prions, candidates for a durable and dangerous existence? Biologists, of course, but also a large assembly whose composition must be ensured by the slow search for reliable witnesses capable of forming a voice that is at once hesitant and competent. Requirement number two, relevance of the consultation. This search for good spokesperson is going to necessitate a rather complicated course of action as well for veterinarians, cattle farmers, butchers, government employees, not to mention cows, calves, sheep, and lambs, who must all be consulted one way or another according to the procedures that have to be reinvented every time. Some coming from the laboratory, others from political assemblies. A third group from the marketplace, a fourth from the government, but all converging in the production of authorized or stammering voices. It is clear that the power to take into account is translated into a sort of state of alert imposed on the whole collective. Laboratories do research, farmers investigate, consumers worry, veterinarians point out symptoms, epidemiologists analyze their statistics, journalists probe, cows mill about, sheep get the shakes. And then 268, and that is footnote 17. See especially the role of whistleblowers, as described by Chateau Renaud and Tourney, 1999, and Sheila Jasanoff's important book, Jasanoff, 1999, 95. The difference between indoor and outdoor research. See Colon and Lescooms et al., 2001. Where are we on? 111? No, we're on like 112, bro. That's actually probably it. Yeah, okay, we are. It is critical not to bring this general alert to an end too soon by assigning stable facts to the common world of external nature and with the multiplicity of opinions in the social world, as if this world could be equated with the more or less irrational representations that humans make of it. If there was one thing that must not be reintroduced artificially in this business, precisely the good sense distinction between facts and values. Still, there was no need to mix everything up. The new separation of powers is going to manifest its relevance by making the collective undergo an operation that would be illicit in the power to take into account, that will take on its full meaning with the power to put in order. The same heteroclite and controversial assembly of peons, farmers, prime ministers, molecular biologists, and beef eaters is now going to find itself in the grip of a second power that must of course stabilize the controversy, bring an end to the agitation, and calm the states alert, but on condition that it not use the old manner which has now been rendered unconstitutional. It is especially important not to impose an artificial distinction between facts and values which would necessitate disturbing the indisputable arbitrarily, by inviting the government to close the discussion with its arbitrariness. It is important to ask instead a completely different question. Can we live with these controversial candidates for existence, these prions? A third requirement. Number 3, the requirement of publicity, of hierarchy, comes up now. Must all Europeans' cattle farming be modified? The entire meat distribution system, all manufacturing of animal-based feed, in order to make room for prions and situate them within an order that will relate them from largest to smallest. It is no longer a matter of an ethical question that would come in the wake of a now established question of fact. Only an intimate familiarity with the controversy over the existence of these candidates, a controversy that is still going on and for whose conclusion we no longer need to wait, make it possible to measure the importance of the changes required simultaneously in consumers' taste, the imposition of quality labels, the biochemistry of proteins, the sheep herders' conception of epidemics, the three-dimensional modeling of proteins, and so on. 268 again, and we're on 115. We're on 18. We recognize in the dislocation between the continuing movement of research and the work of closure the emergence of the principle of precaution. So important for all these questions. Wait. Oh, I think I read 16 instead of 17. I think I read 16 instead of 17. Well, I think I skipped 17. Which isn't... Which we don't need 17. As 16. 16 is fine. It's just, It's just him bringing up Whitehead again. To this question about relative importance, there was no ready-made answer. And then back to 268. I was really confused when I read this, and I was like, okay, I guess there is something next. But then I realized, no, it doesn't make sense because in relation to the section, because I fucking read the wrong footnote. Okay, so 19. As we shall see in the following section, and especially in chapter 5, the only answer to this question is an experimental answer that can serve as a serious substitute for morality only after the introduction of the notion of collective experience. Okay. I was confused about this. The only answer to this question is an experimental answer that can serve as a substitute for morality. He's talking about as in contrast to the ready-made answer. I'm gonna mark this with, I'll mark it with orange. Make a little note. In contrast, Fuji. Yes, I am. I forgot I was using Zotero, and I've been trying to remember to like mark shit. So I should start marking stuff. Yeah, I finally switched it over the other day. The only reason why I didn't the only reason why I didn't use Zotero before the last stream was because I forgot to do it before stream, and I was like, I don't want to waste time. After all, automobiles kill 8,000 innocent victims every year in France. No tenderloin has killed more than a few French meat eaters so far, and even these cases are in doubt. How can we arrange in order of importance the beef market, the future of Professor Dormant, the slaughter caused by automobiles, the taste of vegetarians, the income of farmer neighbors in the Bourbonnais region, the Nobel Prize awarded in 1987, Professor Stanley E. Prusiner, one of the discoverers of prions? Does this list sound too heterogeneous? Too bad. It is indeed this power to establish a hierarchy among incommensurable positions for which the collective must now take responsibility. We cannot homogenize the voices that participated in the power to take into account, any more than we can avoid seeking to homogenize those who participate in the power to put in order. I'm gonna mark this. I'm gonna mark it with mark these with we'll do pink. We'll do pink. Pink will do what I'll do. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Um, I don't think for Latour that it is an easy or a simple question, and I also think that for Latour it is like okay, we actually okay, I actually am going to take a detour for this. Okay, promises. The promises of constructivism. Okay, I'm gonna go over. We're gonna take a little fucking detour a little bit, and we're going to go over um the we're gonna go over um the five what's it called, the five guarantees. Where's the first guarantee? Fly stage. When is management symmetric? Nope, don't care. First guarantee. Okay. Yes, yes. We're just gonna go over it because this will answer a lot of your questions. So in this there is Ian Hacking makes this guy named Ian Hacking makes a little uh uh a chart, like a little thing, and he has like I think it's five positions, and they're from most constructivist to most realist. I think it is. So I can actually see. Let's see. Let's see. It'll be at the beginning of this. Thanks to this attempt, clarifying this most one solution would be the same naturalist on the one hand and deconstructionist on the other. Okay. Yes. Yes. Thanks to this attempt, I might succeed in offering a convincing inventory of what sentences. Blah, 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 blah. What is it actually about? I forget. Blah, 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 blah. To classify the various schools of social constructivists, only a branch of this family, as I will show, he offers a scale that goes from 0, x is given by nature, then to stage 1, x could have been otherwise, then to stage 2, x is bad, then to stage 3, x should be overthrown. In this view, social constructivists can be ordered from the most innocuous, things have not always been the way they are, they have a history, to the more radical, they should be changed. And all the brands are opposed to negative 1, which Hacking implies but does not define. X is the way it is, period. And through this, he kind of gets his 5 guarantees. The first guarantee. Once there, and no matter how it came about, discussion about X should stop for good. This is an essential assurance against endless controversies, heckling, superfluous doubts, excessive deconstruction. Such is one of the 2 meanings of the word fact. Once in place, reality should not be allowed to be disputed, it should be used as the indisputable premise of other reasonings. This is the only way to assure a base of solid and stable facts to rest upon, if only to occasionally thumb a table in good spirit. If this leverage is taken out, it seems that the discussion is no longer possible any longer. If a party named constructivist appears to be jeopardizing this essential guarantee, then that means war, and it is no surprise that the other factions will try and exclude it from any parliament. What went so wrong in the earlier debates around social construction was that such a guarantee when ignored, or rather was confused with the equally important one just to follow. And this is the second guarantee. In spite of the indisputability ensured by the former, a revision process should be maintained, an appeal of some sort, to make sure that new claimants, which the former established order had not been able to take into account, will be able to have their voices heard. And voice, of course, is not limited to humans. This is exactly what the crowd reviewed by Hacking requires when they attack the naturalized, indisputable, taken for granted stage 0. Only what has been made can be unmade or remade, such as an indispensable source of energy. If all the means of revision are taken away, we are simply faced with the indisputable matters of fact which have always been the way they are. An essential guarantee has been jeopardized, and that too means war. New candidates to existence will be forbidden access to the common world. A party called Naturalists appears to forestall all discussions, all revisions, because they use the state of nature to short-circuit due process in the name of law and order. It is not surprising that the other factions will try to exclude it from the parliament. Oh my god, I got message. Oh my god, Kenichi, what's up? I got message. I'm so upset. I'm so sad. Open volume mixer. And that's the second guarantee, and there's 3 more now. The delicate checks and balances of political epistemology require both guarantees. There is no due process without them, but the discussion does not stop at these 2. Third guarantee. The common world is to be composed progressively. It is not already there once and for all. This guarantee is totally muddled when transformed into an argument for contingency against necessity. And on that account, Hacking falls into the trap. To prove that matters of fact have been constructed, it is argued, one has to simply show that they are contingent, they could have been otherwise, that they are not necessary. To disprove the constructivist account, it is counter-argued, one has simply to show that there are no 2 ways for X to exist, only one. But such a debate is a profound misreading of the real argument in science studies, especially in the history of science. The point is not demonstrating the existence of alternative physics, chemistry, or genetics, but about the impossibility of absorbing the world in the singular, in one single chunk. The unified world is a thing of the future, not of the past. In the meantime, we are all in what James calls the pluriverse. Those scientists, philosophers, activists, commoners of all sorts who strive to make it one are taking risks, and they could fail. Danger, contingency, uncertainty does not qualify the result, which might well be necessity herself. the process through which the world becomes progressively shared as one same world. The opposition is not between contingency and necessity, but between those who want to order the world once and for all on the cheap pretexting that it is already one so they can subtract everything else from it, and those who are ready to pay the price of its progressive composition into one because they cannot subtract anything. And then the fourth guarantee. Humans and non-humans are engaged in a history that should render their separation impossible. Again, this feature of constructivism is deeply misread when seen as a debate between realism and nominalism. Words and worlds do not represent two statues facing one another and marking the respective territories of two kingdoms, only to one of them will loyalty be sworn. Rather, words and worlds mark possible and not very interesting extremities, inputs, complex set of practices, mediations, instruments, forms of life, engagements, involvements through which new associations are generated. To imagine that a choice has to be made between statements and matters of fact would be like pitting the two banks of a riverbed against one another while ignoring the huge imparable river that streams in between. If philosophy has only registered the choice between realism and nominalism, this has nothing to do with the way we all deal with the truth content of matters of fact, with a precise political order that has requested a strict separation between humans and non-humans. As soon as the political assembly is modified, and this is precisely what is registered by science studies, the guarantee is not to finally obtain a clear separation between words and worlds, nature and culture, facts and representation, but just the opposite, to ensure that there is no such separation. And then the fifth guarantee. Institutions assuring due process should be able to specify the quality of the good common world they have to monitor. As I have shown above, what is so crucial in the accounting proper to constructivism is to be able to differentiate good and bad construction, and not to be stuck forever in the absurd choice, is it or is it not constructed? Although the philosophical tradition has separated the moral question of the good life from the epistemological one of the common world, it is just a question of which common world is best, and how it can be shared as one, which occupies a stage when the subtle discourse of practice is foregrounded. This is where the composition of the common world takes in meaning, and what has been expressed from the Greeks onward by the word cosmos, by opposition to kakosmos. The question of the common world cannot even begin to be raised when an opposition is drawn to an unconstructed world, already there, already unified, devoid of values on the one hand, a constructed motley of conflicting social or subjective value claims on the other. Simply to be there is not enough for matters of fact to be absorbed, associated, digested, rendered compatible with other conflicting claims, that to be composed, become instead states of affairs. A lot to this. I could go on with this, and if you have any questions, I will answer. But otherwise, since we are short on time, we are short on time pretty much. I don't know how long it'll take me to get through the next sections of the politics of nature, and I want to try to get to the end of the chapter. I think that'd be good. I like that. Since I stopped so short last stream. But I hope this helps with some of your questions. Yeah, and it's also like he says in the second guarantee, there's a revision process to this. It's not just that this is like, once this is instituted, it can never be questioned. It can never have this happen again. Just kind of basically there I'm gonna put this in like a very like simplified and in a way Latour probably wouldn't like, but to simplify it, it's kind of more just there needs to be legitimate questions, more or less, I guess. Like there needs to be actually something new, like brought forward. Like if something is determined to have failed in some way, that shouldn't be brought up again as like the thing to question it all. There should be something else to it, I guess, is the basic thing. Is how I'm gonna put it in a very simplified way that probably misses a little bit. By definition, also to continue, we just got to through the third guarantee of this, which was we need to figure out uh, uh, we need to put in order things. We need to figure out which voices are more which things are more important than the other. We need to do this because this is just kind of necessary. Um, Obviously, we need to figure out, well, what do we devote our time to? What do we devote this to? What do we need this to? Because obviously, even with like 8 billion people, we can't devote our time to everything anyway. So we have to figure stuff out. Um, what is more important? What is the most important? What should we focus on more than other things? Which that might also be a bad way to say it. I'm not sure if his point is that we should. Hmm, I'll just put it that way. I'll think about it. By definition, the power of arranging cannot purify propositions by listing them in advance in the categories of fact or value. Also, serious, you can ask questions about this. Yeah, yeah. You can ask questions about this. I was more just about with like politics of nature. Sorry, not politics of nature. The promises of constructivism, mainly just because like there's a lot in the promises of constructivism. Like there's a lot you can go over. Um, and so it is one of those things where it's like it would take quite a bit. But asking for the politics of nature is fine. That should be fine. It has to come to terms with its diversity. Sorry, wait. I'm going to read it again. I got sidetracked. By definition, the power of arranging cannot purify propositions by listing them in advance into categories of fact or value. It has to come to terms with this diversity and bring it to an end through a painful series of adjustments and negotiations. The escape route of matters of fact is no longer possible. There no longer exists any help from the outside that could simplify the solution. Neither that of nature nor that of violence, neither right nor might. When the solution is eventually found, as seems to be the case for the 8,000 French automobile deaths, all the propositions that connect the prion, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, the meat distribution system, and the theories of infectious diseases will be stabilized and will become bona fide members of the collective. Requirement number 4, closure of the institution. Their presence, their importance, their function will no longer be subject to discussion. The prion and its attachment will henceforth have an essence with fixed boundaries. Their descriptions will be found in manuals. Victims will be indemnified. Casualties and responsibilities will have been apportioned through an operation that could be called attribution. We agreed to use this expression to cross scientific causalities with juridical accusations. And then footnote 20. On the distinction between science and law, see Latour 2002b. I think I know what that is. We're on 114?
Yeah, we are.
I think that is the making of law. I think that's what that is. The prions and its entourage will have been completely internalized, the collective having changed profoundly now that it is composed of, in addition to all the entities that it accepted heretofore, prions responsible for diseases that are dangerous for humans and animals, and that could be avoided if the production of animal-based meal and the conditions of slaughter were modified. The prion will have become natural. There's now no reason to deprive ourselves of that adjective, which is very convenient for designating on a routine basis full-fledged members of the collective. By requalifying in our own terms the mad cow episode, so typical of the matters of concern, proliferation cracked the narrow framework of the old Constitution. They have not lost sight of the essential demands of reality, relevance, publicity, and closure. They are all present. Only the self-evident difference between facts and values is missing from the roll call. Only the indisputable externality of a prion that has always already been there. But this addition would add neither clarity nor morality. It would add only confusion. More precisely, it would add a facileness, an arbitrariness, a short circuit, a shortcut by allowing a proposition to jump directly from perplexity to institution. Something that the new separation of powers is precisely designed to prohibit. If we look at figure 3.1, we see that we have substituted a new form of bicameralism for the two houses of the old Constitution. And then the old bicameralism is House of Nature, House of Society, Facts, Values. Wait. Okay. After a 90-degree, let's read the first thing. For a 90-degree reversal, fact-value distinction has becomes the distinction between the powers of taking into account and the powers of arranging in rank order. Oh, okay. So the first one is between facts and values, and the second one is between taking into account and arranging in rank order. That's what it is. The first one is vertical, the second one is horizontal, which represent the two sets. That's what these are, the two sets. There are still two houses, as in the old Constitution. They do not have the same characteristics. By imposing a 90-degree shift on the important difference that previously divided fact from value, we have modified not only the composition of the compartments, which are grouped in rows instead of lined up in columns, but also the functioning of this difference. Yeah. 90-degree shift because it goes whoop, 90 degrees. That's how it works. And then 268. And we are on 21. In all the following diagrams, I will use the metaphor of lower and upper house to see these two assemblies that redissect the collective unified in the previous chapter. The metaphor is a bit far-fetched, I know, but I want to retain as many of the terms associated with our Western democratic tradition as possible. 114. Nope, it's 115. Distinction between facts and values was at once absolute and impossible, as we saw above. It refused to be construed as a separation of powers and claimed to be inscribed in the nature of things, distinguishing ontology on the one hand and politics and its representations on the other. The second difference between the question of taking into account and that of ordering is nothing absolute about it, but nothing impossible either. On the contrary, it corresponds to two complementary requirements of collective life. How many of you are there to take into account? Are you able to form a good common life? The fact that these two questions must be carefully distinguished does not prove that a border police, similar to the one that patrolled the old border between science and ideology in vain, has to be put in place. It is enough simply that the discussion about the common world not be constantly interrupted by the discussion about the candidates for existence. Discussion of the new entities not be constantly suspended, the pretext that one does not yet know to what common world they belong. Instead of an impossible frontier between two badly composed universes, it's rather a matter of imagining a shuttle between two arenas, between the two houses of a single expanding collective. The administrators in charge of the separation of power, whose own powers we shall discuss in Chapter 5, will surely have to be vigilant that they will not have the impossible task of being custom officers and smugglers at the same time. And then I'm gonna get coffee. I'll be right back. Brain break. Taking a little brain break, guys. Be right back. All right. I'm back. Let's continue. Verifying that the essential guarantees have been maintained. We cannot conclude our effort at untangling and repackaging facts and values without verifying that we have indeed fulfilled the set of specifications to which we committed ourselves in the first section. I said, in effect, that the valid fact-value distinction argument's role as a short circuit, which we obviously are not going to maintain, against which, on the contrary, we're going to have to learn to struggle, also accomplish several other tasks that are mixed in together for contingent reasons. Let us recall in box 3.3 what we agreed to accept on our own account, abandoning the notion of fact, then that of value, and the distinction between them. We have definitely fulfilled the first clause. The work of fabrication of facts is no longer reduced to its last stage. Now that we are allowing the articulations of propositions in the successive states of their natural history to emerge, from the appearance of candidate entities to their incorporation into the states of the world. Instead of defining the facts by the suspension of all controversy, all uncertainty, all discussion, we can now define them, on the contrary, the quality of procedure that involves them. Any new entity, in a series of successive agreements. It is useless to repress, hide, or play down the importance of controversies, the mediations of instruments, the cost of knowledge, and the clamor of disputes. Also, I thought that 3.3 was a different thing, so we're going to actually look at 3.3 real quick. Summary of the specifications that the successor to the fact-value distinction has to respect. The notion that replaces that of fact has to include the successive stages of fabrication. The notion that replaces that of fact has to include the role of shaping responsible for stabilization. The notion that replaces that of value has to allow the triage of propositions while paying close attention to the fact to the facts in detail rather than turning the attention to foundations or forms. The notion that replaces that of value has to guarantee against the cheating that causes values to be disguised as facts and facts to be disguised as values. The notion that replaces the fact-value distinction has to protect the autonomy of the sciences and the purity of morality. The notion that replaces the fact-value distinction has to be able to ensure a quality control at least as good as, and if not, if possible, better than, the one that is being abandoned, concerning both the production of facts and the production of values. Yes. And so the first one has to include its successive stages of fabrication. The notion that replaces that of fact has to include the successive stage of fabrication has been done. We did that. We freaking did it, guys. We have installed controversies at the heart of collective activity without worrying about whether they are nourished by the usual uncertainty of research or whether debates proper to representative collective assemblies. Representative assemblies. I don't know why I should also part of that. We might actually have to stop here. We might actually have to stop here. Because I think I'm getting a migraine, so I should probably lay down. But I really don't want to. I really want to continue. We probably should stop here. In my free time, I should edit my videos. Tomorrow, since I have work, I'll edit my videos before work. I'll be fine. I just need to lay down. And I should be able to attend at 4. And then I think later I'll stream again and I'll finish this off. I started it. I wanna finish it. I wanna finish this chapter. But yeah. I should be able to stream at 4. I just need to lay down for a bit. That's all I gotta do when I get headaches like this. Well, I will be going so I can lay down a bit. Before I hop on Sirius's stream. We'll still be hopping on Sirius's stream. Unless I am like literally so out of it that like I can't function. I'll be fine as long as I'm not reading. So I should be fine either way as I'm not reading. So it should be all good. But I'll probably stream later tonight. I think I've decided. So yeah. See everyone at 4 on Sirius's stream.